Let me tell you something. The Middle East is on the edge of a knife right now, and Washington is buzzing like a hornet's nest that somebody kicked on their way to the mailbox. Reports are coming in that President Trump has ordered a fresh round of strikes against Iran. Could happen as soon as this weekend, and Tehran is standing up on its hind legs saying, "We are ready." U.S. embassies urging departures, American personnel potentially on the move, and somewhere in a cave or a bunker or wherever the mullahs hang their turbans these days, the regime in Tehran is making their calculations about whether they mean it this time. Now, is this the moment everything changes in the Middle East? Is this the thing that finally reshapes the map? And what does it mean for you sitting in your car right now, driving home from wherever you've been? We are going to get into all of it. And then Dr. Anthony Fauci. Oh, my friends. The diaries have come out. The states are circling. Louisiana just joined the investigation, and it turns out that the man who told you to stay inside, close your business, and mask your toddler had a lot of things he wasn't telling you. A lot of things. I'm Rick LeBow. This is Rush Hour, and we are just getting started. My friends, we have U.S. embassies telling American personnel to think about getting out. We have Tehran on the record saying, "We are ready." And we have a president who, and I say this as someone who has watched this corner of the world for longer than I care to admit, does not generally say things he doesn't mean. So let's talk about Iran. The reports say Trump has ordered a new round of strikes, possibly within days. Now, the drive-by media is already in full pearl-clutching mode. The anchors are furrowed and sweating and trotting out every retired general they can find who has an opinion. And the question everybody's asking is this escalation? Is this a mistake? Is this going to spiral? Let me offer a different question. What has not striking Iran gotten us? Think about it. For decades, the United States has watched the Islamic Republic of Iran fund terrorism from Beirut to Baghdad, arm every group that hates us, threaten to wipe our closest ally in the region off the map, and develop nuclear capabilities while we sat around holding diplomatic talks and offering pallets of cash. Pallets of cash. Barry Obama actually did that, by the way, sent them actual money on an actual plane. If you're just joining us from Rio Linda, that really happened. $150 billion effectively returned to the Iranian regime in the form of sanctions relief and a frozen assets deal, plus an extra $1.7 billion in cash on a plane in the middle of the night. And we were told that was diplomacy. That was the art of the deal, Obama style. And Iran spent it. They spent it on Hezbollah. They spent it on the Houthis. They spent it on every destabilizing proxy operation you could name across the Middle East. So when people ask whether Trump is escalating, I want to flip that around. Trump struck Iranian targets before. Remember, he took out Qasem Soleimani, the top Iranian military commander, the architect of their proxy network. And the media told us World War III was 3 days away. That was back in January of 2020. We're still here. The sky did not fall. The sky never fell. What actually happened is that Iran got a very clear message. And for a little while, they behaved. Now, here's where it gets interesting, folks. You have to understand something about the Iranian regime right now. They are not in a strong position. They are not in a strong position at all. The New York Post is reporting, and this is from anti-regime sources on the ground in Tehran, people with eyes on what's actually happening in the streets, that the Iranian people are near a breaking point. Public executions, economic collapse, a war with no end in sight. The regime is brutal because it is frightened, and it is frightened because the population is seething. Protest leaders are reportedly trying to arm themselves. Think about that. This isn't people walking in the streets with signs anymore. This has the character, if those reports are right, of something more serious. The Post's sources say a revolution could happen any day now. Now, I'm cautious about that kind of language. Regimes have a way of surviving longer than anyone expects, but the underlying reality is real. The mullahs are under pressure from every direction. So when Trump looks at Iran right now, he is not looking at a strong adversary. He is looking at a regime that is stretched, that is frightened, and that has continued to push. And in Trump's strategic logic, which I would argue has been vindicated more often than the media will ever admit, the right response to that is not to ease up. The right response is to press now. Tehran saying, "We are ready." What does that mean practically? They have proxies scattered all over the region. They have the Houthis, they have Hezbollah, they have Iraqi militias, and they have, somewhere in the program, nuclear ambitions that never actually went away, no matter how many agreements were signed. Their retaliation, if it comes, could take a dozen forms. But here is what I keep coming back to. The regime in Tehran has been threatening sweeping retaliation for about 45 years. 45 years of "we are ready." 45 years of death to America. And in that time, they have been careful, always careful, not to go so far that they bring the full weight of American military power down on the actual apparatus of the state. Because they know, and this is the thing the diplomats never say plainly, they know that the moment the United States decides it is serious about ending the Islamic Republic as a government, rather than just managing its behavior, the Islamic Republic ends. They know that. So all the chest thumping about being ready has to be understood in that context. That does not mean there's no danger. There is danger. Americans could be at risk. The region could catch fire in ways that are unpredictable. I'm not waving that away. But the idea that the correct response to Iranian aggression is to not respond, to negotiate, to offer concessions, to send pallets of money, that approach has a 45-year track record too. And the track record is it did not work. It empowered the regime, it prolonged the suffering of the Iranian people who, by the way, by and large, do not hate America. They hate the people running their country. So here we are, August 2026. Trump is in the White House, the region is on a knife's edge, and the question is whether a decisive strike now, with a regime that is internally weakened and externally exposed, finally changes the equation in a way that decades of careful diplomacy absolutely failed to do. I don't know what happens next. Nobody does. But I'll tell you this, folks. I know which direction I trust, and I know which direction has a better record. And it is not the direction of "let's talk about it some more." All right, my friends, Anthony Fauci, the man, the myth, the mascologist, the high priest of pandemic theater, and the hits just keep on coming. Let's start with the states. Louisiana's Attorney General, Liz Murrill, has announced Louisiana is joining Alabama and Florida in investigating Anthony Fauci for potential state crimes. Her specific allegation: he lied under deposition. Lied under deposition. Now, where I come from, that's a fairly serious charge against a man who sat before Congress for years, hand on heart, telling us everything was above board, everything was legitimate, everything was science. Nothing to hide. Remember that? Somebody dug up the clip. Fauci, on the record, "I would cooperate fully." I have nothing to hide. You know, folks, in my experience, and I've been around long enough to have some, the people who announce most loudly that they have nothing to hide are the ones hiding the most. And now the diaries, the private Fauci diaries, have surfaced. And they are, I am told, a remarkably revealing document. The kind of document you write when you believe you are the smartest person in every room you've ever entered, and you want to make sure posterity knows it. His relationship with Trump, and this is in his own words, started out reasonably collegial, and then, as we all watched in real time, turned into something else entirely. Now, a few things have come out around this that deserve to sit next to each other in the same sentence. First, an unearthed clip of Fauci, going back to the AIDS crisis, making claims about transmission that were, at best, wildly inaccurate, suggesting children could get it through the air and through casual contact. Classic panic mongering. Same playbook. Stoke fear in populations that don't need to be frightened, for reasons that have much more to do with politics than with science. Second, Deborah Birx, Trump's former COVID coordinator. She has apparently admitted, and this is significant, that Democrat-led states deliberately overclosed during 2020 in order to send a political signal in an election year. They closed things down harder than the science required, longer than the evidence demanded, because it made Trump look bad. Let me say that again, because I want it to land. Blue states kept you locked in your house, closed your child's school, killed small businesses, isolated elderly people from their families, not entirely because the virus required it, but because they calculated it would hurt Donald Trump politically in November of 2020. Folks, if that's true, and Birx is saying it is, and she was there, that is one of the most consequential and grotesque abuses of public health authority in the history of this country. These were not mistakes. These were not overcautions made by frightened bureaucrats. These were political decisions dressed up in epidemiological clothing. And Fauci was the face of all of it, the scolding uncle on TV every night telling you that you were going to kill grandma if you went outside, while he attended dinners. While the rules that applied to you apparently had exemptions for the people making them, 3 states are now investigating. And I'll tell you something, the fact that actual attorneys general in actual states are treating this as a potential criminal matter rather than just a policy dispute, that is not nothing. That is very much not nothing. Because for years we were told that questioning Fauci was anti-science, was dangerous, was the province of cranks and conspiracy theorists. And piece by piece, year by year, the cranks and conspiracy theorists have been proven right about almost everything. Don't doubt me on this. I have been saying it since before it was comfortable to say it. Now, one more thing on this before I move on. Tom Suozzi, Democrat congressman, who is apparently one of the last remaining members of his party who hasn't completely lost his mind, is out warning that the Democratic Socialists of America are taking over the party, and it needs to stop. He's comparing them to the House Freedom Caucus, the far right of the Republican Party, says Democrats need to fight back against their own socialist wing. My friends, when a sitting Democrat is publicly sounding the alarm about his party drifting toward socialism and using those exact words, that tells you something about how far left the party has actually moved. The Freedom Caucus wants lower spending and border enforcement. The Democratic Socialists want to nationalize industries and defund the police. These are not remotely comparable, but I appreciate Tom Suozzi noticing there's a problem. Better late than never, Tom. Better late than never. And speaking of your modern Democratic Socialist, Brian Romero, New York State Assembly, incoming member, annual salary, $142,000. What did Brian do before he was sworn in? He went on GoFundMe asking for $2,000 for rent and groceries. $2,000 for rent and groceries. He hadn't started the job yet, and he was already practicing for the wealth redistribution. Just redistributing from your wallet directly to his refrigerator. He deleted the post after backlash, because apparently even his supporters found this to be a little on the nose. This, ladies and gentlemen, is your Democratic Socialist. The guy who is going to fix income inequality, who is going to make sure everyone has enough, who is going to speak truth to the power of the wealthy, needs a GoFundMe to make rent before his $142,000 government job starts. For the people, for the people. My friends, before I leave you today, let me just mention one last thing. The In-N-Out shooting in Twin Falls, Idaho. 3 people dead, more expected. A shooter opened fire in the parking lot of a shopping center Saturday afternoon, hit an In-N-Out restaurant. One of the dead was a worker. The owner of the chain put out a statement, and I'll tell you, it was the kind of statement that reminds you why some businesses still have a soul. My heart is broken, my chest is heavy, my eyes burn from the tears I've shed. That was a human being writing that, not a PR department. 3 people went out on a Saturday afternoon, and they didn't come home. There's not a lot to say about that doesn't feel inadequate. It's a tragedy. It's a senseless, ugly tragedy. And we should say that plainly, without immediately turning it into a political football, which certain quarters of our media landscape will do before the bodies are cold. The suspect is dead, that's all we know, and all the families of the victims know is that their people are gone. Now, the piece in the Washington Examiner today had a headline worth mentioning. Run, hide, fight is already too late. And the argument, which I think is correct, is that by the time you are running and hiding, the moment for prevention has already passed. There is a serious conversation to be had in this country about what actually keeps people safe in places like parking lots on a Saturday afternoon. And the answer that the left always reaches for, fewer guns in the hands of law-abiding citizens, is precisely backwards. But that is a conversation for another day. Today, we just note the tragedy and the loss. My friends, I want to leave you with something. We are living in an interesting time. The Fauci accountability is finally arriving, even if slowly. Iran is being confronted rather than coddled. The socialist wing of the Democrat Party is so visible that even Democrats are scared of it. The country is awake in ways it hasn't been in a long time. There are things to worry about. There are always things to worry about. But the American people have a way of squinting at a situation, cutting through the noise, and landing on the right answer. They did it in 2024. They'll do it again. The all-knowing, all-sensing, all-seeing Maha Ricky has spoken. I'm Rick Labow. This has been Rush Hour. Same time tomorrow if they let us back on.